All right. Welcome everyone to this week's edition of Carvel Community Meeting. Today is March 22nd, 2021. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and adding to our Carvel YouTube playlist. Please read and abide by our code of conduct, which is listed right here in the agenda. If there's anything that we don't get to in this agenda, we do have Carvel office hours that happen every second and fourth Thursday of the month, starting at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. We do have one this week, which is March 25th. So please join us for that as well, for anything that we might need to move from this meeting to there, or if there's anything that you need help with regarding Carvel. If you're interested in becoming a contributor or anything like that, that's just some more in-depth time that the maintainers have available to you to really get into the project tool suite. And with that, I will hand it off to Aaron to go over the announcements and other status updates, as well as the backlog of different things. Stop sharing.
All right. Happy Monday. Let's see, I'll change this view. There we go. So a few announcements. We got a couple releases last week. First one we'll mention is vendor. So adding authentication arguments to the Helm repo add command. And then we also cut a release for kapp-controller, consuming that vendor change, as well as a recent cap bump that we talked about last week, as well as maybe the most noteworthy item is this issue that was delivered immediately reconciling apps when associated secrets or config maps change. I guess, I don't know, Daniel or Eli, anything else y'all want to add to either of these?
Only other thing is that there was the addition of adding an image package bundle as a fetch source. And this has actually been around for a bit, but I think we just had some time between when our last release was cut and when this was added. So that's the only other thing in there.
I've been taking a look at community issues this morning, and one came in about vendor version 17, which no longer has the versions package, which kbuild now depends on. Is there any consideration or plan for that, or is that something that we'll just have to address?
I'm not sure when it was removed, but I can look at that real quick and see. I think if it's removed, we should probably update kbuild to use wherever the new part is, or wherever that code moved to.
Cool. Sounds like I might need to make an issue. Awesome.
Oh, yeah, okay. So this was done because we had to generate some like Kate's specific code for that using the code generator. So it should just be updated. It's now in like a V1 Alpha 1 package instead. So
Cool. Thanks for the live troubleshooting. I guess one other thing to mention was we also cut a new alpha of kapp-controller last week as well, including some of the changes that we just mentioned in 0.17, and likely some kind of stability experience enhancements as well. So on to, I guess last announcement, as we mentioned last week, but we are hiring a staff engineer. So please check it out if you're interested. Status updates, we have a number of things in flight. YTT schemas, it's in progress. Currently, folks are working on the type checking private libraries. Anything else I guess people want to add there?
Just while we're talking about YTT, there are also a couple of nice like UX improvements that we're looking at, excited about releasing. One was detecting when your YAML is not a template, just a plain YAML file. Now we're automatically recognizing that, so you can just pipe YAML in as part of your set of files that you're sending in, and it'll just work just for that file, which is great. You can turn off that ignore unknown comments flag, so that'll be coming soon. That's exciting. And then another improvement that came out of schemas is the ability to overlay when you have a value that's currently null, to like add in a different value that was like before you would get, hey, expecting a map, but was nil. That'll be in the past soon. So we're excited about a couple improvements that are just being pushed forward by schema stuff. It's great. So I'll look for that in the next release.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
We also have recursive bundles track in progress. Any updates?
Still in progress, just working on updating the image lock files in nested bundles recursively. And in parallel with this is also a UX improvement, which is ideal. Like we submitted a PR upstream and that got merged. We're waiting for that library to get updated so that the UX of image package can change from what we have today to you can see in real time how many bytes are being uploaded versus the total amount of bytes you're waiting for. So you can maybe see a progress bar or something to that effect. That's about it.
Very cool. Let's see, we also have some KEP enhancements in progress. I believe last week we had a docs improvement story. I think that was wrapped up. Yeah, anything you want to share there?
Yeah,
Ken?
that pull request is on Carvel Dev, and it's open for review because it did go through an initial round of review and changes were made. So if anyone wants to review that for clarity and correctness, that would be great.
Cool. Then kapp-controller world, the package manager API MVP is still very much in progress. I don't know, Daniel, Eli, anything you want to share at a high level there?
No, I don't think much has really changed in the last week. I think we just merged a change that was mentioned before, I think, of now you can update your values for a package and it'll get pulled in immediately. But other than that, I don't think there's been any major updates.
Cool. And then similarly with kapp-controller, we're also weaving in some enhancements between all the API MVP work. So those are ongoing as well. If folks have any triage help topics they want to discuss today, please feel free to add a note here. Same with more general discussion topics. We'll try to keep an eye on these lists, and if any topics show up, we'll try to carve some time out at the end of this meeting. But if no one else has any announcements or updates, we can dive into the backlog. Cool. So let's do some filtering. All right, so things are, I guess from like a priorities perspective this week are still fairly stable from what we've been working on. Recursive bundles still very much in flight. Let's see, we have a story currently in progress, a documentation story pointed, and then we have the, I guess, kind of one more story, which is remove experimental, the flag. and then an additional follow-on story for supporting copying bundles referenced by other bundles in images lock. Let's see, maybe we can, I don't know, discuss one story this week. Does that sound fair?
I don't think we'll get to it this week, but we can definitely discuss it and point it, and just, that's also okay.
Okay. I don't know. If we don't think we'll get to it, maybe we can just postpone until next week then. So it sounds like we're good. Recursive bundles front. So take a peek at schemas. See, so we have this check private library data value story in flight. We have pointed the next story about supporting floating types. Is this feeling pretty good for the week as well?
Yeah, it seems like we got a reasonable amount of, yeah, Carrie's nodding as well. So, yep.
Good stuff. This cluster fulfilled resources, that's one that we had already discussed as an explore story. Let's take a look at, what is it? Show all issues not in an epic. See, so we do have this image package 1. Recursive pulling should be filterable. Okay, so this one jumped to the top. So this one might be worth discussing. Let's see. Eli, since you're here, would you be interested in presenting this one?
Yeah, so this was an issue that we, from the packaging side, opened. Essentially, adding a feature that allows users to filter which bundles will be recursively pulled from the images lock file. So the specific use case we had in mind is there's an idea of a package repository in the packaging APIs, and not every single bundle in your images lock file will be a repository, but kapp-controller only wants to pull repositories. So instead of spending the work to pull every entry in the images lock file and then go through and manually determine which ones are repositories or not, this feature will allow it to like be a little more efficient and only pull certain bundles based on the annotations. And then that's the kapp-controller specific use case, but the generic one is users can add any annotations or other tooling can add any annotations, and you'll be able to pull based on those. I don't know if Joao had more details about like implementation or anything, but that's sort of the high level use case that we had in mind when opening this issue. So.
And this is specific to a pull. This wouldn't affect copy or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you get into some
just pull.
Yeah, if it's added to copy, you get into some weird cases where there's no longer guarantees that all the images are coming along with the bundle. And then if people don't know that certain things were filtered beforehand, you'll get like weird failures and stuff. So only for pull.
Have we converged on a UX for this yet? Like how would the user specify a filter?
I don't know the answer to that. But my speculation would be just a flag that like allows specifying an annotation or something.
Dennis, do you know whether or not we've already exposed like a namespace for referencing a bundle? Like, oh, this one. Is that something that the user has access to?
No, not that I'm aware of. Like when we push a bundle, we label it and we expect a certain project structure, but there's no that I'm aware of, you know, a namespace for it. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe whoever picks up this story might have some discovery work to do. I mean, there certainly is a proposal as to a way that we could take this, but at this point, I don't think we, I don't know, have converged on a solution yet.
Yeah, I think if I was to pick it up, I would definitely work on turning this into a story, having acceptance criteria, like similar structure to the other stories we've had, get feedback from packaging team, Eli, etc. And then once it's good to go, we could point it.
Okay, sounds good. So maybe what we need to do is pull this from our prioritized backlog and do some discovery work first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, because it's adding API, like it's adding to the interface. So we'd want to be really careful not to commit to a certain approach that later becomes not ideal for other cases. So yeah.
Okay.
So we'll look at that story as a kind of explore. Is that the way to maybe look at that particular card right now? Say, hey, this one is do the exploration to try and define the story behind this,
Yeah.
and then that way that's prioritizable.
Is there a good way where we can, like, should we add a label to this or something?
To say it's an explore.
Yeah.
Like one thing we've done with other stories is just make that the prefix of the story name. That's a cheap, easy way of doing that. And then we've generally given it like a 0 point, just to like, I don't know. So that's one possibility. Yeah.
Cool.
And then we
I
know we
like
can
that.
prioritize that. And so then I'm usually looking for like, what are the set of questions that need to be answered that would like make the story, that like make it possible to write stories. So Carrie asked a great one, which is what's the UX? So that'd be a good story. That'd be a good question for us to unpack. And then I asked a terrific question around, is there sort of a general way that we want to refer to bundles? You know, because this is being recorded, I have to say, like, that's tongue in cheek. The greatness of my question. Anyway. But then like the expected outcome would be either we've come up against some kind of, we discovered something that sort of prevents this for some crazy reason. Maybe there is. Or we've got stories.
Cool. Does it sound good for folks? All right. I like the idea of just 0 and explore. And then once it's worked on, then we can revisit it. Okay. So I think we're pretty good in terms of like runway. Let's see, any topics added? note. Yeah, I don't know. Would folks find value in discussing any other stories? Anything that's in flight? Discussing anything at all?
Is anything from any of our proposals right now that would be worthwhile bringing up in this forum?
Well, one thing I'll mention, since this is a community meeting and the community could benefit from this, is I drafted a PR that describes how our backlog works. In particular, like what the name of the columns are, descriptions, any labels we use, and how they progress. Like I mentioned, this is still under construction. It's in draft state, but please do give any early feedback if you have it. That's a plug for my proposal. Anyone else want to plug theirs?
I'm curious, where's the accepting unannotated YAML as data values proposal at?
Yeah, good question, Eli. We have it looks pretty good. We have an approach. So we believe that at a minimum we'll want to support an additional yeah, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, so this one, let me contextualize it real quick. So this proposal is about there's a need from many different places, and this is sort of actually a long-standing request. Can I please provide to YTT, can I provide data values that are in just plain YAML? That is, that don't have any annotations on it, and that I can somehow tell YTT, treat this file as if it were a data values file. So we have an approach. The sort of fundamental approach is we'll introduce a new file mark type. So file marks are a feature within YTT to be able to say, here's a path that describes one or more files, and I want you to change how you process it. Sometimes it's saying, well, omit it from the output when by default normally would be included, or usually you think this is a template. Why don't you treat this as a file that could be loaded by a template and used as data? And then this new one we're going to add is, usually you might think this is just plain YAML and you'll process it that way, but actually we want you to treat it as a data values file. So you point to the file you want to be a data values file, and you say type equal YAML data values. So that's sort of the general approach. There's one thing that this surfaced, which was in the file mark feature itself, the path that you give to identify the file or files is actually a relative path. It's relative to once we load up all of the files from the -f parameters that you give on the command line, those all get kind of squished into a single tree. You can sort of think of them as like mount points. If you're used to like the Unix file system, you can load up and attach different drives to make it look like it's one single file system. The problem with the challenge that comes up with that is you could actually have two files that have the exact same path. And it's possible that you may want to treat one file one way and another file another way. And today there isn't a way of doing that. So, so we wanted to solve that before we went forward with this proposal, because what we don't want to do is accidentally turn multiple files into data values files. And frankly, it'd be nice to be able to solve that problem generically for file marks. So there's an issue that we created around that to sort of like think it was like a mini proposal, if you will, just saying, hey, what if we accepted operating system file paths optionally for that path value of a file mark. If you did that, then you'd be able to uniquely identify a file because you're back in the operating system land, that place where, and you would be able to like point uniquely to a file. So that'd be a nice downshift option. If you run into a collision, you can name that. Otherwise, it's fully backward compatible. We would continue to support relative paths. So that issue just needs a little bit of review and then turn into sorting and implement. That will unblock the proposal, and then we could proceed with that primary implementation. There's another half to that. There's that part. Did I lay that out well, Eli?
Yeah, that was
Okay,
great.
cool. And then there's another half to the proposal, or a second potential approach, which would be to introduce yet another flag, but it'd be specialized. It would be --data-values-file. And what this flag would do is include a specific file that you name as its argument, and it would give it that same treatment. So as if it would file mark it as a data values file. And the reason for there's two reasons for that. One is that first of all, if you kind of think of the UX of like the case where somebody's using YTT from the command line, it sure reads nicely if you say YTT-f config -- data values file, and then here's the data values file. And often, if I am a configuration consumer, so I'm somebody who's using a YTT library, then my data values file is probably not inside the library in the first place. So it's not unreasonable to think that that file wouldn't have been included in the config in the first place. So that's kind of nice. It reads nicely. The command line sort of says what it does, sort of self-documenting. It's pretty cool. And then the other case is in providing data values that are plain YAML, no annotations, that contain sensitive data. Maybe you're including a decryption key or secrets bodies or something like that, or something, a CERT or sorry, private key. For some reason you want to include that. And so you don't want it written to disk. You'd rather use what's called process substitution. That's for that. You do that like redirect, and then there's a parenthesis, and whatever's inside there actually gets its own file descriptor, and that gets piped in as if it were like a file. And you can even give a name for that thing. So sometimes it'd be useful just to be able to not have to give it a name, but be able to do that process substitution. So that's another. It's sort of a nicety. It's definitely the second option is a convenience feature. So I think we're going to split the first part and the second part, and make sure that we at least get that file mark approach completed, and then consider the added complexity and maintenance that it might be to include this convenience feature. So we'd be a little bit more judicious about that.
Okay, cool. So like the preferred way, at least initially, is going to be file marks, and then maybe some sugar comes along later. That cool.
Yep.
Thank you for that recap.
Yep. Yeah. Great question.
Cool. Good stuff. I think maybe just like one other thing to note with the image package proposal here is that Joao, I believe had, what did I do? So he shot this off before taking off for a couple weeks, but is planning to revisit this PR, this discussion next week. So still time to provide any thoughts there. But yeah. Anyone else have? Oh, we got some topics now. Okay, we're capturing what we talked about. Cool. Anything else from folks?
All right, I'll do one real quick. Not to expand the work to fill the time, but just be on the lookout. There's another proposal that I'm hoping will get resolved pretty quickly. Going to put in today around how we manage documentation. So I'll make some noise on the Carvel channel. Just be on the lookout for that. We're really hoping to. There's a couple parts that are a little bit bumpy right now. It's not a huge deal, but it'd be nice to get that resolved and going. So.
Sounds good. Cool. I think we can call today's early then.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. And this will be uploaded to our YouTube playlist later today. So be on the lookout for that. If you weren't able to attend today's meeting, just a reminder, we do have the Carvel office hours this week on March 25th. Looks like the bulk of that will be available to use for anything you might need help with from the maintainers, whether that's learning how to contribute, or if there's something that you're stuck on or are interested in a particular part of the tool suite. That's a great opportunity for you to come and attend those. It's going to be at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on March 25th of this week. And again, we do meet every Monday for our community meetings at that same time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we hope that we see you at one of those options soon. With that, have a good week.